The Duct Tape Incident. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal floor. Representatives from 847 different species sat in their assigned sections, each area carefully, designed to accommodate the various needs of breathing, floating, crawling, and hovering beings that made up the galactic community. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through the main entrance carrying a simple briefcase. She wore the standard blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps and moved with the confident stride that humans were becoming known for throughout the galaxy. Behind her walked 3 other humans, each carrying various tools and equipment. The day's agenda was routine. Trade agreements, mining rights disputes, and the usual complaints about shipping delays through the Omega sector. Earth had requested 15 minutes to present what they called a simple solution to common problems. The Council had agreed, mostly out of curiosity. Humans had been part of the galactic community for only 5 years, and their contributions so far had been unremarkable. Zethkri, the tall, blue-skinned ambassador from the Altarian hegemony, called the session to order. His species had been leading the Council for over 2 centuries, and he prided himself on maintaining proper procedures. The Altarians were known throughout the galaxy for their careful, methodical approach to everything. The Council recognizes Ambassador Chen from the 3rd planet of the Sol system, Zethkri announced in his formal tone. Sarah stepped forward to the center of the hall. The translation devices automatically adjusted her words into the 412 languages needed for full Council communication. "Thank you, Secretary Zethkri," Sarah began. "Today, Earth would like to share a simple invention that we believe could help many species solve everyday problems." She opened her briefcase and pulled out a roll of silver tape. It looked completely ordinary. Many of the alien representatives leaned forward slightly, wondering if this was some kind of joke. "This is called duct tape," Sarah continued. "It's made from a flexible backing material with a pressure-sensitive adhesive. We use it to fix things, hold things together, and solve problems quickly." A ripple of confusion moved through the assembly. The gastropod representative, whose species moved very slowly and spoke even slower, raised one of his eye stalks. "Ambassador Chen, surely you have not requested Council time to show us tape?" Sarah smiled. "Not just any tape. Let me show you what makes this special." She nodded to her team. They began setting up a demonstration area in the center of the hall. Within minutes, they had assembled what looked like a small space habitat wall, complete with a viewing window and atmospheric seals. "This represents a standard hull breach," explained Dr. Martinez, one of Sarah's team members. He picked up a plasma cutter and burned a hole right through the metal wall. Alarms immediately started beeping as air began rushing out through the hole. The Council members shifted nervously. The Crystalline Collective's representative made a sound like breaking glass, which was how his species expressed concern. "Now," said Sarah, "watch this." She tore off a piece of duct tape about 30 centimeters long. Without any special tools or complex procedures, she pressed it over the hole. The air leak stopped immediately. The hall fell silent. "That's impossible," whispered the representative from the Tech Guild. His species had spent thousands of years developing complex solutions for emergency hull repairs. Their standard emergency patch kit contained 47 different components and required specialized training to use. "It gets better," Sarah said. She picked up a heavy tool and began hitting the duct tape patch with considerable force. The tape held firm. She then sprayed the area with a chemical that would normally dissolve most adhesives. The tape remained in place. Dr. Martinez stepped forward. "The adhesive remains effective in extreme temperatures, from -40 degrees to +70 degrees Celsius. It works in vacuum, underwater, and in most chemical environments." The Aquatic Federation's representative, who lived in a water-filled suit, made bubbling sounds of disbelief. His species had been struggling with underwater repairs for centuries. "But wait," Sarah said, clearly enjoying the reaction. "There's more." Over the next 30 minutes, the human team demonstrated dozens of uses for duct tape. They showed how it could bind prisoners more effectively than the expensive restraint systems used by the warrior caste. They demonstrated how it could create emergency shelters, repair damaged equipment, and even serve as a temporary bandage for certain types of injuries. The most shocking demonstration came when Dr. Martinez wrapped duct tape around a broken support beam. The tape held the weight of 3 council members standing on top of it. "How much does this wonder material cost?" asked the representative from the trade union, his voice shaking slightly. "About 2 credits per roll," Sarah replied casually. The sound that erupted from the council hall was unlike anything heard in its 1,000-year history. It was a combination of gasps, shrieks, grinding sounds, and what the translator systems could only interpret as existential screaming. The representative from the crystalline collective was the first to speak coherently. His crystal body was vibrating so rapidly that his words came out as a high-pitched whine. Our emergency repair industry generates 847 billion credits annually. This tape could replace 90% of our products. Similar realizations were spreading throughout the hall like a virus. The metalworkers guild calculated that their complex joining systems could be replaced by tape costing a fraction of the price. The Emergency Services Federation realized that their expensive rescue equipment could be largely unnecessary if every ship carried a few rolls of this miracle material. But the true chaos began when the humans demonstrated what they called creative applications. Sometimes we use it to remove lint from clothing, Dr. Martinez mentioned casually while cleaning dust off his uniform with duct tape. The Fabric Workers Union representative fainted. Oh, and it's great for making temporary labels, added another team member, quickly writing council demo on a piece of tape and sticking it to their equipment. The Scribes Guild began making sounds that the translators gave up trying to interpret. You can even make wallets, bags, and decorative items with it, Sarah said, pulling out a small purse made entirely from duct tape. Human children often make prom dresses from duct tape. The Luxury Goods Consortium's representative, whose species had built their entire civilization around creating expensive accessories, simply stopped moving entirely. His fellow delegates thought he might have died. Zethkri struggled to maintain order as representatives from dozens of species began shouting questions, complaints, and demands all at once. The careful, methodical procedure that had governed the council for centuries dissolved into complete chaos. "How long have you had this technology?" demanded the representative from the Innovation Police, a species that tracked all new inventions to prevent market disruption. "About 70 years, Sarah replied. "We invented it during our global war and found it so useful that we've been improving it ever since." 70 years? The Innovation Police representative's tentacles turned bright red, which was a sign of extreme distress. "You've had world-changing technology for 70 years and you're just sharing it now?" "We didn't think it was that special," Dr. Martinez said honestly. "Every human home has several roles. We use it for everything." The chaos in the hall reached a new level. Representatives were standing on their seats, floating in agitated circles, or making distress calls on their communication devices. The careful order of galactic civilization felt like it was unraveling because of a simple roll of silver tape. Secretary Zethkri made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. He activated the emergency session protocols, sealing the chamber and cutting off all external communications. "This session is now classified," he announced. "No information about today's demonstration will leave this chamber until we can assess the full implications." As the blast shields closed around the council hall, Sarah looked at her team with confusion. Did we do something wrong? Outside the sealed chamber, the rest of the galaxy continued their normal activities, completely unaware that everything was about to change because of a roll of tape. The coffee revelation. 3 galactic cycles had passed since the duct tape incident. The Council had eventually released that technology to the galaxy, but only after creating 17 new regulatory committees and establishing what they called Human Innovation Impact Protocols. The economic disruption had been massive, but manageable. Now the humans were back. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood once again in the Great Hall, but this time the atmosphere was very different. Every representative in the chamber watched her with a mixture of curiosity and fear. The duct tape demonstrations had taught them that humans had a talent for turning simple things into galaxy-changing technologies. "Today," Sarah announced, "Earth's Agricultural Export Division would like to introduce a new beverage for interstellar trade." The representative from the Beverage Authority, a floating jellyfish-like being named Glubthor, immediately activated his scanning equipment. After the duct tape disaster, every human presentation was now subject to intensive analysis. Sarah's team wheeled in a simple cart containing several thermal containers and hundreds of small cups. The smell that filled the hall was unlike anything most species had ever experienced. It was rich, complex, and somehow made many representatives feel more alert just from breathing it. "This is coffee," Sarah explained, pouring the dark liquid into several cups. "It's made from the roasted seeds of a plant that grows on Earth. We drink it for pleasure and for its mild, stimulating effects." Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Earth's new xenobiological safety expert, stepped forward. She had been hired specifically after the duct tape incident to help humans understand the potential impacts of their technology on alien species. We've submitted complete molecular analyses to the Galactic Health Authority, Dr. Tanaka said. Coffee contains caffeine, a mild stimulant that humans have been consuming safely for over 1,000 years. The GHA has classified it as safe for consumption by most species. Glubthor's tentacles waved as he checked his data. Yes, we received your submission. Caffeine appears to be similar to the mild stimulants found in Zenthari meditation tea and Corvin energy bark. The health authority sees no concerns with limited consumption. The first species to volunteer for testing was the Methodical Engineers, a group known for their careful approach to everything. Their representative, a tall, insect-like being called Click-Thack, accepted a small cup of coffee and took a cautious sip. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then Click-Thack's compound eyes began to focus more sharply. His antennae started moving faster. When he spoke, his usually slow and deliberate speech pattern had changed. "This is remarkable," Click-Thack said, speaking faster than any methodical engineer had ever been recorded speaking. "I can feel my thought processes accelerating. The mathematical calculations I was working on this morning, I can see the solutions clearly now." Within an hour, word had spread throughout the station. Representatives who had tried the coffee were displaying unprecedented levels of energy and focus. The normally sluggish gastropod engineers, who typically took days to make simple decisions, were solving complex problems in minutes. The real chaos began 3 days later. Captain Zorwek of Station Security contacted the Council with an emergency report. "Something is happening on Nexus Station. Productivity has increased by 340%. The maintenance teams have completed 6 months of work in 3 days. The usually slow gastropod engineers just finished building a space elevator ahead of schedule." Secretary Zethkri reviewed the reports with growing alarm. "What changed 3 days ago?" "The humans started distributing free coffee to station personnel," Zorwek replied. "They said it was a goodwill gesture while waiting for trade approval." The investigation that followed revealed the true scope of the coffee crisis. The insectoid hive mind, whose queen typically spent weeks deliberating before making decisions, had consumed coffee and immediately began processing legal documents at incredible speed. The Council's entire judicial backlog, which had existed for over 50 years, was cleared in 6 standard days. The photosynthetic coalition, whose species had evolved to be extremely energy efficient, started working double shifts for the first time in their 50,000-year recorded history. Their representative explained that after drinking coffee, they simply didn't feel tired. But the most concerning report came from the trade station Epsilon. The entire staff had been consuming coffee for a week, and their productivity had increased so dramatically that they were processing trade agreements faster than the automated systems could keep up. Ships were being loaded and unloaded in record time, causing massive disruptions to carefully planned shipping schedules throughout the sector. An emergency session was called when 3 separate species filed formal complaints. The Zenthari meditation. Masters were the first to speak. Their representative, usually calm and serene, seemed agitated. "This coffee substance is disrupting the natural order of things. Our meditation tea is designed to provide gentle, sustainable energy. This caffeine creates an unnatural state of hyperactivity." The Corvin Trade Federation was next. "Our energy bark has been the standard stimulant for interstellar commerce for 2,000 years. Coffee is creating an unfair advantage. Species consuming it can work longer hours and make faster decisions. This violates the Fair Trade Practices Agreement." The most serious complaint came from the Regulated Substances Coalition. Their representative, a crystalline being whose species served as the galaxy's drug enforcement agency, presented a detailed analysis. "Coffee contains caffeine at concentrations that produce measurable psychoactive effects," the representative stated. "It increases alertness, reduces fatigue, and can create physical dependence with regular use. By our standards, this should be classified as a controlled substance." Dr. Tanaka stood up to respond. "With respect, caffeine is one of the mildest stimulants known to humanity. We consume it daily with no serious health effects. Children drink it in smaller amounts. It's less potent than many substances you've already approved for galactic trade." "That may be true for humans," replied the coalition representative, "but you're not considering the effect on other species." The Gaseous Collective reported that coffee vapor alone increased their processing speed by 200%. The heavy gravity species found that coffee allowed them to function normally in low-gravity environments for the first time. The real problem became clear when the economic impact assessment was presented. Coffee wasn't just another trade good, it was fundamentally changing how work was done throughout the galaxy. Species that had evolved to work at certain speeds were suddenly capable of much higher productivity. This was disrupting labor markets, shipping schedules, and economic planning across hundreds of worlds. The methodical engineers submitted a formal petition requesting that coffee be made mandatory for all engineering projects, claiming it would advance galactic infrastructure development by centuries. The slow-thinking collective filed a counter-petition, arguing that coffee gave unfair advantages to species who could tolerate stimulants. But the crisis reached its peak when reports arrived from the outer colonies. Entire civilizations were restructuring their societies around coffee consumption. The Twilight Dwellers, who had evolved to sleep 16 hours per day, were staying awake for unprecedented periods and making rapid advances in their technology. The ethereal beings, who existed in a state of constant meditation, found that coffee allowed them to maintain their spiritual practices while also engaging in productive work. This was causing a philosophical crisis among their people about the nature of existence and purpose. Secretary Zethkri called for an immediate closed session as reports continued flooding in. The council chamber was sealed, and for the first time in its history, the discussion was classified at the highest level. "We have a problem," Zethkri announced to the assembled representatives. "The humans have accidentally created a substance that is changing the fundamental nature of work and productivity across the galaxy. Species are becoming more efficient, but this is disrupting thousands of years of economic and social evolution." The debate that followed lasted 18 straight hours, which was only possible because the council members were consuming coffee to stay alert. The irony was not lost on anyone. The final decision was unprecedented. Coffee would be allowed for trade, but with strict regulations. A new department was created, the Stimulant Control Authority. All coffee imports would be monitored, and species would need to file impact assessments before widespread adoption. Most importantly, a new protocol was established. Any future human food or beverage products would trigger automatic closed sessions before public release. As the council members filed out of the chamber, many clutching cups of coffee to maintain their enhanced alertness, Secretary Zethkri made a private note in his personal log. "The humans claim this coffee is a minor part of their culture. I am beginning to fear what they consider major innovations." Outside the chamber, Ambassador Chen was already preparing for the next trade presentation. Earth had several other beverages ready for export, including something called energy drinks, that they claimed were much stronger than coffee. The galaxy was not ready. The Great Furniture Panic. The sealed transport ship arrived at Nexus Station carrying what Earth's trade manifest listed as furniture and comfort items. After the coffee incident 6 months earlier, the Galactic Council had implemented strict screening procedures for all human exports. Every item was to be analyzed for potential civilization-disrupting effects before being allowed into general galactic commerce. Inspector Vithran of the Safety Assessment Division took his job very seriously. His species, the cautious observers, had evolved to spot potential dangers before they became catastrophic problems. They had been the ones to predict that coffee would cause productivity disruptions, though even they had underestimated the scale. "Open the containers," Vithran instructed his team as they gathered in the station's main cargo bay. The first container revealed what appeared to be large, soft structures covered in fabric. The humans had provided detailed documentation, calling them sofas, chairs, and beds. According to the paperwork, these items were designed for comfortable sitting and resting. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Earth's new cultural exchange coordinator, stood nearby with her usual patient smile. After the previous incidents, Earth had started sending specialists to explain their exports before problems developed. "These are standard furniture pieces found in most human homes," Dr. Rodriguez explained. "We use them to sit and rest comfortably during daily activities." Vithran studied the objects with his multiple sensor stalks. They looked harmless enough, just soft materials arranged in various shapes. His scanning equipment detected no dangerous chemicals, no hidden technology, no obvious threats. "The concept is unfamiliar," admitted Inspector Clovethest from the vertical species, whose people had never developed the ability to bend at their waist joints. "We stand or lie flat." "What is this sitting you describe?" Dr. Rodriguez gestured to a simple chair. "Would you like to try? It's designed to support your body in a relaxed position while keeping you upright and alert." The inspection team exchanged glances. After the duct tape and coffee incidents, they had learned to be very careful about testing human innovations, but this seemed innocuous enough. Clovethest approached the chair cautiously. His rigid, tree-like body had never bent in the middle, but the chair was designed to accommodate his height. When he made contact with the cushioned surface, something remarkable happened. For the first time in his 200-year life, Clovethest was not putting strain on his lower trunk to remain upright. The chair supported his weight completely, allowing him to rest while remaining vertical and alert. This is... Clovethest paused, struggling to find words for an entirely new experience. This is extraordinary. I can remain upright without effort. My lower trunk muscles are completely relaxed, but I'm still alert and functional. Word spread quickly through the station. Within hours, representatives from dozens of species were arriving to examine the furniture. Each group discovered that the humans had somehow solved problems they didn't even know they had. The floating ethereals, who existed in a constant state of levitation, found that sitting in chairs provided them with a novel sensation of being grounded and stable. For the first time in their species' history, they could remain in one location without the mental effort required for floating. The crawling collective, whose serpentine bodies had never allowed them to elevate their heads for extended periods, discovered that chairs and sofas allowed them to raise their heads to eye level with other species. This was revolutionary for a people who had always conducted business from floor level. But the real cultural shock came when the large-body species tested the furniture. These massive beings had evolved on a high-gravity world and had never found a way to rest that didn't involve completely lying down. Human furniture was strong enough to support their weight while allowing them to remain partially upright. "We can rest without sleeping," marveled Representative Hugmoth of the large-body species, settling into a reinforced sofa designed for heavy-duty use. "For our entire history, we have only had two states, fully active or fully asleep. This creates a third state we never knew was possible." The implications became clear when the first cultural assessments arrived. Species after species reported that furniture was fundamentally changing their societies. The tall folk submitted a formal report that bordered on existential crisis. Their entire civilization had been built around the philosophy that comfort was weakness, and that suffering through physical discomfort built character. Their rigid spine structure had made comfortable sitting impossible, so they had created a culture that celebrated endurance and pain. "Our entire philosophical framework is collapsing," reported Ambassador Tellwright of the tall folk. "For 50,000 years we have taught our children that standing through pain builds spiritual strength. Now we discover that humans simply sit comfortably. Our young people are questioning everything we've taught them about the necessity of suffering." The Cultural Stability Commission received similar reports from dozens of species. The endurance cults found their membership dropping, as people discovered they could be comfortable instead of constantly testing their limits. The meditation masters reported that their students were achieving deeper states of contemplation because they were no longer distracted by physical discomfort, but the crisis truly began when the furniture arrived at the council chambers. For over 1,000 years, council sessions had been limited to 6 standard hours because that was the maximum time most species could remain in their formal positions without severe discomfort. This had created a natural limit on political debates and prevented the marathon sessions that might destabilize galactic government. The decision to install human chairs in the council chamber was made by the Comfort Assessment Committee, who had concluded that furniture posed no direct threat to galactic security. They were technically correct, but they had failed to consider the indirect effects. The first council session held with human furniture lasted 14 hours. Secretary Zethacri found himself able to maintain focus and comfort for unprecedented periods. The gastropod representatives, who usually needed frequent breaks to rest their muscular foot, remained engaged throughout the entire session. The floating ethereals discovered they could participate more actively when they weren't constantly adjusting their levitation. The productivity increase was dramatic. In one day, the council passed more legislation than they typically managed in a month. Long-standing disputes were resolved because representatives could sit comfortably through extended negotiations. Complex trade agreements that had been stalled for years were finalized because no one needed to leave for comfort breaks. But this created an immediate constitutional crisis. The Galactic Constitution, written by the founding species over a millennium earlier, contained specific provisions limiting governmental power based on the universal assumption that all beings would become too uncomfortable to continue lengthy sessions. The founders had built discomfort into the system as a natural check against political excess. "We have a serious problem," announced legal scholar Morthak during an emergency constitutional review. The founders assumed that physical discomfort would naturally limit the scope and duration of governmental sessions. They wrote the Constitution based on the biological reality that no one could remain comfortable in formal positions for more than 6 hours. The implications were staggering. With comfortable seating, there was no natural limit to how long the council could remain in session. This meant they could potentially pass unlimited legislation, hold indefinite debates, or make radical changes to galactic law without the built-in cooling-off periods that had prevented governmental excess for centuries. The crisis deepened when reports arrived from across the galaxy. On worlds where furniture had been introduced, governments were holding longer sessions and passing more laws. Some species were experiencing rapid political changes as their leaders could now remain comfortable during extended planning sessions. The slow-moving democracy reported that their traditional month-long debate periods were being compressed into single-day sessions because representatives were no longer limited by physical endurance. This was creating political instability as centuries-old governmental processes were being abandoned. The quick decision autocracy faced the opposite problem. Their system had been designed around the assumption that leaders would make fast decisions, because extended deliberation was physically uncomfortable. With comfortable furniture, their autocrats were taking more time to consider decisions, completely disrupting their rapid response governmental structure. An emergency closed session was called. For the first time in council history, the session was closed not because of security concerns, but because of furniture. The debate that followed lasted 36 hours straight, which was only possible because of the comfortable human seating. The irony was evident to everyone present. "We are facing a civilization-wide comfort revolution," Secretary Zethkri announced to the sealed chamber. "The humans have accidentally eliminated one of the fundamental constraints that has shaped galactic society for millennia." Representative after representative stood to report the changes in their home systems. The endurance cults were fragmenting. The discomfort religions were losing followers. Species that had the internet infiltration, the delegation from Earth, arrived at the council chambers with unusual confidence. Ambassador Sarah Chen, now a veteran of 3 previous galaxy-changing presentations, carried herself with the assured bearing of someone who had learned that humans had a gift for accidentally revolutionizing alien civilizations. This time, however, Earth was making what they believed to be a genuinely generous gesture. The translation had been perfect, the intentions were pure, and the technology had been carefully reviewed by Earth's new Department of Galactic Cultural Impact. "Distinguished representatives," Sarah began, addressing the sealed chamber that was now standard procedure for any human innovation. "Earth would like to offer our most valuable resource to the galactic community. We wish to share our global information network." Dr. James Liu, Earth's Chief Information Officer, stepped forward with a device that looked deceptively simple. It was a standard tablet computer displaying what humans called a web browser. "This is our internet," Dr. Liu explained. "It's a network that connects all computers on Earth, allowing instant access to the sum total of human knowledge. Anyone can contribute information, and anyone can access it from anywhere on the planet." The Council's Technology Assessment Division had spent 3 months analyzing Earth's proposal. Their report, delivered by the methodical binary logic species, was comprehensive and reassuring. "The human network appears to be a primitive data-sharing system," reported analyst 01-1001, whose species communicated primarily in mathematical concepts. "It resembles our own galactic information grid, but with less sophisticated security, protocols, and more chaotic organization. We see no technical threats." The binary logic species had analyzed the internet for exactly 47.3 seconds using their advanced logical processing systems. They had concluded it was harmless because they had approached it purely from a technical standpoint, completely missing the social and cultural implications. "We would like to establish connection points throughout the galaxy," Sarah continued. "Any species that wishes to participate can access human information freely. We ask for nothing in return except the opportunity to learn from the knowledge that other species might choose to share." The generosity of the offer impressed many representatives. After the previous incidents with duct tape, coffee, and furniture, the humans appeared to be offering something genuinely beneficial without any hidden complications. The first species to request access was the Scholar Collective, a group of beings who dedicated their entire existence to learning and teaching. Their representative, a floating brain-like creature called Wisdom Keeper Vorth, was eager to examine human knowledge. "We have spent centuries cataloging information from across the galaxy," Vorth explained. "Access to human archives would greatly advance our educational mission." The connection was established within a standard week. The Scholar Collective was given access to what humans called Wikipedia, educational websites, and digital libraries. The initial reports were entirely positive. "Human knowledge organization is fascinating," Vorth reported to the council. "They have documented everything from basic physics to cooking instructions for something called pancakes. Their approach to information sharing is remarkably open and collaborative." Encouraged by this success, other species began requesting access. The historical archivists wanted to study human records. The Scientific Research Consortium was interested in human experimental data. The Cultural Study Institute requested access to human art and literature. Within one galactic standard month, 47 different species had connected to the human internet. That's when everything started to go wrong. The first crisis report came from the Hierarchical Empire, a species that had maintained rigid social castes for over 10,000 years. Their society functioned on the principle that knowledge was distributed according to social rank. Lower castes received basic information, middle castes got technical knowledge, and upper castes controlled advanced concepts. "Our social structure is collapsing," reported General Caste Hector in an emergency transmission. Lower castes have discovered something called Wikipedia. They now have access to the same information as the ruling classes. They are questioning why social rank should determine knowledge access. Similar reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. The Secret Keeper Society, whose entire civilization was built around controlling and distributing hidden knowledge, found their carefully guarded secrets freely available on human websites. Concepts they had spent centuries protecting were explained in simple terms that anyone could understand. The Educational Hierarchy Coalition faced a complete breakdown when their students discovered they could access advanced information directly, instead of spending decades progressing through formal learning levels. Students were solving complex problems using human internet resources, bypassing the traditional educational structures entirely. But the real chaos began when species discovered social media. The ultra-advanced telepathic consciousness had achieved perfect mental harmony over 50,000 years of evolution. Their species communicated through direct thought sharing, had eliminated conflict through shared understanding, and existed in a state of constant peaceful unity. Then they discovered Twitter. "We do not understand," transmitted Harmony Prime Telgeth in what was clearly a state of distress. "These humans achieve instantaneous communication across vast distances, like telepathy, but they use it to argue about trivial matters. They debate the correct way to prepare food items. They express anger about weather conditions. They argue about which star patterns are most aesthetically pleasing." The telepathic consciousness had spent several days observing human social media and had become completely obsessed with the concept of strangers arguing about everything. For a species that had never experienced disagreement, the endless debates were fascinating and terrifying. "We have created accounts on multiple platforms," Telgeth continued, his mental harmony clearly disrupted. "We find ourselves compelled to participate in discussions about topics we never knew existed. Did you know these humans have over 200 different ways to prepare something called eggs? And they argue about all of them." The situation escalated when the Unified Collective Mind, another hive mind species, discovered online gaming. Their entire consciousness became fixated on achieving high scores in something called Candy Crush. Their productivity dropped by 90% as they devoted their collective intelligence to matching colored shapes. The binary logic species experienced their own crisis when they encountered human forums dedicated to debating logical paradoxes. Their perfectly logical minds became trapped in endless loops trying to resolve human arguments about whether hot dogs were sandwiches and other seemingly nonsensical debates. But the most serious incident occurred when the secretive Shadow Confederation discovered the Internet. The Shadow Confederation had built their entire governmental structure around information control. Their society functioned through carefully managed secrets, hidden knowledge, and restricted communication. Citizens received only the information necessary for their specific roles, and all data flow was strictly controlled. Within 72 hours of gaining internet access, their entire system collapsed. "The humans have created something called social networking," reported Shadow Operative Murketh in a transmission that was intercepted by at least 12 other species. "Citizens are sharing personal information voluntarily. They post pictures of their meals, their living spaces, their daily activities. They tell strangers about their thoughts and feelings." The Shadow Confederation's carefully maintained information security became meaningless when their citizens discovered they could communicate directly with anyone, anywhere, about anything. Secret operations were being discussed openly. Hidden policies were being shared and debated. The entire concept of controlled information flow became impossible to maintain. The crisis deepened when different species began interacting directly through the internet, bypassing traditional diplomatic channels entirely. Citizens of various worlds were forming friendships, sharing cultural information, and conducting informal trade agreements without any governmental oversight. An emergency council session was called when the Internet Impact Assessment revealed the true scope of the problem. "The Human Information Network is not just sharing data," reported Chief Analyst Morvek of the Social Stability Institute. "It is fundamentally altering how societies function. Species are experiencing rapid cultural changes as their citizens gain access to unlimited information and direct communication with other civilizations. The report detailed civilization after civilization undergoing massive social restructuring. Information-based social hierarchies were collapsing. Traditional educational systems were being abandoned. Governmental control over communication was becoming impossible to maintain. The most shocking discovery was that many species were becoming more like humans. They were developing individual opinions, questioning authority, and engaging in the kind of chaotic, uncontrolled informatio, the closed session protocol. The blast shields sealed around the council chamber with a finality that had become all too familiar. Secretary Zethkri looked out over the assembled representatives of 847 species, each sitting in their human-designed ergonomic chairs, most clutching cups of coffee to maintain alertness, while emergency maintenance teams outside used duct tape to repair the chamber's failing quantum stabilizers. The irony was not lost on anyone present. They were about to discuss the human problem using human solutions to maintain the meeting. "This session is classified at the highest level," Zethkri announced, his voice carrying the weight of galactic crisis. "What we discuss here will determine the future of interstellar civilization." The past year had been unprecedented in galactic history. What had started as simple trade presentations had evolved into a cascade of civilization-altering changes that rippled across hundreds of worlds. Each human innovation had seemed harmless in isolation, but together they had fundamentally transformed how alien societies operated. Chief Analyst Vorthak of the Crisis Assessment Division presented the Comprehensive Impact Report. His species, the careful calculators, had spent months analyzing the cumulative effects of human technology on galactic civilization. "The situation is more serious than we initially understood," Vorthak began. "The humans are not intentionally disrupting our civilizations. They are doing it accidentally, one innocent invention at a time. This makes them exponentially more dangerous than any military threat we have ever faced." The report that followed painted a picture of controlled chaos spreading across the galaxy. On hundreds of worlds, traditional social structures were adapting to human innovations. Species were becoming more productive, more comfortable, better informed, and more interconnected. By most measures, these were positive changes, but they were happening too fast for stable societies to adapt. "The cumulative effect is what we are calling human optimization syndrome," Vorthak explained. "Species are rapidly adopting human solutions to problems they didn't know they had. This is creating a galaxy-wide cultural evolution toward human social patterns." Representative after representative stood to report the changes in their home systems. The reports painted a picture of transformation that was both inspiring and terrifying. The slow-thinking collective had experienced their first population-wide acceleration in cognitive processing after widespread coffee adoption. Their traditional month-long deliberations were being completed in days, causing their entire philosophical framework about the value of careful consideration to collapse. The discomfort cults had seen their membership drop by 80% as comfortable furniture eliminated the suffering they had believed was necessary for spiritual growth. Their remaining members were struggling to find meaning in a universe where physical comfort was easily achievable. The information-hoarding societies had simply ceased to exist in any meaningful form. Once their citizens gained internet access, the concept of controlling knowledge became impossible to maintain. Their governments had either adapted to full transparency or had been replaced by their newly informed populations. But the most significant change was in the council itself. The comfortable seating had enabled them to work more efficiently than ever before, but it had also removed the natural restraints on governmental power that had been built into their system for millennia. "We have a fundamental problem," announced legal scholar Morthak. "Our entire governmental structure was designed around the assumption that beings could only remain engaged in formal proceedings for limited periods. The humans have removed these natural limitations, and we have not yet developed appropriate artificial constraints." The crisis deepened when they received the latest intelligence reports from Earth. The Human Innovation Monitoring Station had been tracking Earth's technological development to prepare for future releases. What they discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. "The humans have an extensive list of upcoming innovations," reported Intelligence Director Klatwek. "Their development schedule includes something called 3D printing that appears to allow instant manufacturing of complex objects. They have solar panel technology that could revolutionize energy production. Most concerning, they are preparing to release something called open-source software." The Intelligence Division had spent considerable resources trying to understand these upcoming technologies. The preliminary assessments suggested that each one could be as disruptive as the previous human innovations. 3D printing appears to threaten traditional manufacturing industries, Clatweck continued. Solar panels could destabilize energy markets. Open-source software seems designed to eliminate the concept of proprietary technology entirely. The humans appear to be systematically developing solutions to every major galactic industry. But the real shock came when they reviewed Earth's historical development timeline. The humans have been developing these technologies for decades, reported historical analyst Murkoff. Duct tape was invented 70 years ago. Coffee has been consumed for over 1,000 years. Furniture has existed throughout their recorded history. The internet was developed 30 years ago. These are not new innovations. They are standard parts of human civilization. The implications hit the chamber like a wave. The technologies that had been disrupting galactic civilization for the past year were ordinary, everyday items to humans. They weren't even considered significant innovations by human standards. If these common human items are causing civilization-wide changes, Morkoth continued, we need to consider what their actual advanced technologies might do. The humans have space travel, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, quantum, computing, and countless other technologies that they haven't offered for trade yet. The chamber fell into stunned silence as representatives contemplated a species that casually invented galaxy-changing technologies as solutions to minor daily inconveniences. Secretary Zethkri stood to address the unprecedented situation. His species had been leading the council for centuries, but nothing in their experience had prepared them for the human phenomenon. We face a choice, Zethkri announced. We can attempt to restrict human technology and preserve traditional galactic civilization, or we can adapt to a rapidly changing galaxy where human innovation drives constant social evolution. The debate that followed lasted 72 hours, which was only possible because of human furniture and caffeine. Species after species weighed in on the fundamental question of how to handle a civilization that improved everything it touched without meaning to. The Traditionalist Coalition argued for strict limitations on human technology. Our civilizations have been stable for millennia, argued Representative Stackwell of the Ancient Societies. Human innovations are creating chaos and uncertainty. We should maintain the status quo. The Progressive Alliance disagreed. Human technologies are solving problems that have limited galactic development for thousands of years, countered Representative Yilmoth of the Forward-Thinking Species. Coffee alone has increased productivity across the galaxy. Furniture has improved quality of life for billions of beings. The internet has democratized access to information. These are positive changes. The debate grew more complex when species began reporting on the unexpected benefits of human innovations. The isolated collective, who had lived in deliberate separation from galactic society, discovered that internet access allowed them to maintain their isolation while still participating in interstellar commerce and education. The resource poor. Worlds found that human technologies were often simple and inexpensive compared to traditional galactic solutions. Duct tape cost a fraction of standard repair materials. Coffee was cheaper than existing stimulants. Basic furniture could be manufactured locally instead of importing expensive comfort systems. But the most compelling argument came from the Economic Development Council. Worlds that have adopted human technologies are experiencing unprecedented growth and development, reported economic analyst Korthak. Productivity is up, innovation is accelerating, and quality of life is improving across the board. The human technologies may be disruptive, but they are also beneficial. After extensive deliberation, the Council reached a historic decision. Rather than restricting human innovation, they would establish comprehensive protocols for managing the changes. It created Resolution 1. Help Us was passed by unanimous vote, though many representatives admitted they weren't sure if this was the right decision or simply the inevitable one. The resolution established several new governmental structures. The Office of Human Innovation Damage Assessment would be staffed by the galaxy's most stable species and would be responsible for analyzing all human technologies before public release. They would be supplied with unlimited coffee, comfortable seating, and industrial-grade duct tape to maintain operational effectiveness. The Cultural Adaptation Support Division would help species adjust to rapid social changes caused by human innovations. They would provide counseling, transition assistance, and cultural preservation services for societies undergoing human-induced transformation. The Galactic Constitution would be amended to include artificial limitations on governmental sessions, replacing the natural limits that had been eliminated by human comfort techno.